communist and I was not a communist, so I did nothing, then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So what they're doing now is picking off different sections of society, like Muslims and others, and as they pick them off, and other people are saying, well, it's not my problem, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a so-and-so, I'm not so-and-so, and then they pick more off and pick more off, and now, people who thought that they were not subject to imposition and police states, like the middle class in Britain, are now going, hold on a second, they're starting to impinge on me. Exactly. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. It's time to come together. Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. And my goodness me, we need that now. And what is there to fear anyway? When you move that point of observation from little me to all that is, what is there to fear? What is there to fear about authority? What is the fear about someone in uniform? Okay, so they do this, so they do that. So we leave this reality a few years early, one or two. Well, we're all that is. It's just an experience. Will we feel better about having tried to make a difference, or we will feel better if we acquiesce and keep our heads down and yes sir, no sir, so we keep going a little bit longer, and then we leave this reality, which we're all going to do anyway? Will we feel good about what we did then? Or will we feel good about saying, no, I'm standing for what I believe in, and I'm not backing off just because you're trying to intimidate me? Comply. This is the pyramid of power. And what do we notice? We, silly sods, are the ones holding it up. You ever noticed the pyramid? The top doesn't hold the bottom up, the bottom holds the top up. And we stand there with our acquiescence and with our fear of challenging authority, with our fear of being different, and we hold this whole edifice of power up, and then we moan about not being free. And if a few people walked out of that pyramid, sorry mate, not doing this anymore. It's the intimidation and the manipulation that keeps us holding this whole thing together. Because this edifice of power is a house of cards. And it depends on us holding the cards together. That's why those at the top of this house of cards are so terrified of us waking up and coming together and ceasing to take part in our own enslavement. Because once we do that, we walk away from the house of cards, and the house of cards collapses. So, I said this in America a few weeks ago. There are hundreds of thousands of people having their houses foreclosed because they've lost their jobs as a result of the banking abomination and greed. And now the banks who created the problem, which led to the people losing their jobs so they can't pay their mortgage, are now coming to taking their house away. And you know what? They're packing their bags and leaving. And I say, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? If you acquiesce to that injustice, then the system wins every time. But if in large numbers, people in America, these hundreds of thousands of people losing their bloody jobs every month or so, said, we're not moving. The system couldn't cope with that level of foreclosures that would not move. And what if the neighbors helped them out? Suddenly the system can't cope because the people are coming together and they're saying, no, we are not accepting this. This is injustice. That's what we need to protect, injustice, not laws that are unjust. If we believe that when a law is passed you have to obey it, then okay, here's me wrists. Put the bloody chains on. Because there's no point. There's no way out of this. Men in dark suits pass laws, introduce laws. Oh, I've had no say in that law. I don't agree with it. I think it's really unjust, but it's the law, so I have to obey it. There you go, put the chains on. Let's all go home. Waste of time. What we need to do is say, not the law is there, so we need to obey it. Is that law just? Is that law fair? Does that law justify itself? in terms of those criteria? If no, I ain't doing it. And foreclosing on people and throwing them out of their homes when the people who are throwing them out of their homes are responsible for the fact that they can't pay the mortgage and therefore get thrown out of their homes, that's fundamental grotesque injustice. What are we doing walking away? What about that thing with wheelie bins I talked about earlier? 250 quid for putting a wheelie bin out on the wrong day. And people go, oh, it's terrible. What's the world coming to? Okay, thousands of you in the same area this week all put your wheelie bins out 2 days before the wrong bloody day. Thousands of you. Okay, local council, sort that little lot out. And you know next week the same's happening. And the next, until you stop doing this ridiculous fining of people for this situation. That's just a simple example. We had a thing in Britain a few years ago, back in the 80s actually, more than a few years, called the poll tax, introduced by Margaret Thatcher, where rich and poor had to pay the same. Ridiculous. And because, crucially, it affected what we call the middle class and the working class in Britain, so that divide, which normally means that's not my problem, has gone, there was a unity of response. Large numbers of people said, this is unjust, we're not paying it. Some of them went to jail for a few weeks, most of them did not. And what happened? Because the system couldn't cope with we're not paying on that scale, the poll tax had to go, and it was fundamental in actually removing Margaret Thatcher from office. The non-comply dance, refusing to comply with our own enslavement. And, you know, I was saying the other day, there's this wonderful line, necessity is the mother of invention. And if we just focus on the fact that we need to find the weakest points in the system where we cease to comply to bring the system down and under our control instead of it controlling us, then the mother of invention from that focus will find phenomenally creative ways of, with the least hassle for us, bringing the system down through non-cooperation, mass non-cooperation. But we have to decide to do it. What are we doing letting these people, some of them in such a moronic state, dictate our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren? What are we doing? Get off our knees! My goodness, what are we doing? They talk about freedom. They cannot grant me my freedom. I am freedom. It's not in their gift to give, and I express my unbreakable desire and will not to concede my freedom to some ridiculous, manipulated system that ceases to impose itself on my life. I am free. I will express my freedom, and you will not grant it to me. It's not in your gift. What would consciousness do? We know what mine would do. What would consciousness do? It's a great line if we are faced with situations. What would consciousness do? Great line from Marcus Aurelius. It is not, if it's not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Real simple. What would consciousness do? If we want a world of peace, then be peaceful. Yeah, you bloody hell, bloody hell, bloody hell. What time are you going on that peace march? If we want a world of kindness, then be kind. Kind of hard, isn't it? It's so desperately intellectual. Martin Luther King said, cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. What would change this world overnight? If we started doing and assessing situations and our behavior and our actions on the basis of what is right rather than what is necessarily our perception of what is right for us in